Your reef lights might look absolutely perfect, but that doesn't necessarily mean your corals are getting the right amount of light. And in a tank like this 180 gallon SPS-dominant Reef, guessing where to put corals can get expensive really fast. So we've had a lot of issues with this tank starting off. We had an alkalinity swing. We had a bad calibration standard for our salinity checking, so our salinity was off. We've corrected all these issues. We've checked all our major parameters. They're all looking good. There's one last thing I want to check, and that is lighting. So today I'm going to use a PAR meter to check the entire tank, and I'm really curious to see what levels I get from these Hyper Reef 200 night crews. So first, what exactly is PAR? PAR stands for photosynthetically active radiation. Basically, it's the measurement of the light available for photosynthesis. The light your photosynthetic corals and the organisms can actually use. And here's the important part. Your eyes are terrible at judging PAR. Two areas of the tank can look absolutely identical, but actually the PAR meter will have dramatically different readings. That's why I think having a PAR meter can take a lot of guesswork out of reef keeping. Since this tank's been set up in January, I've been running two of these Night Crew 200 watt Hyper Reef Gen 2s. And while I have a general idea of where I want my SPS, I don't want to simply assume that the top of the rockwork is getting the amount of light I think it is. Rockwork, water depth, fixture height, surface agitation, and even the position of your corals can all affect the amount of light you're actually receiving. So instead of guessing, I'm going to measure it. All right, we're gonna map the 180 using this Danoplus PAR meter. We've got sticky notes throughout for a grid. I'm gonna put the back, middle, front on each sticky note. All right, let's go. All right, I just finished doing a basic mapping of the 180, and I've seen some interesting things. All right, so my top numbers are the back of the tank, middle number is the middle of the tank, front number of the bottom number is the front of the tank. You definitely see on the sides of the tank, away from these Hyper Reef 200 night crews, a really low PAR. Same thing on this side of the tank. You know, of course, your sandbed is going to be your lowest numbers. Highest numbers at the top, closest to the lights. That all makes sense. And then if you look at them, you kind of see there's some interesting, like sometimes the back of the tank is higher than the middle of the tank. Sometimes the front of the tank is more than the back of the tank or the middle of the tank. It's very interesting to see so many different numbers. So what does all this information actually mean for your corals? Well, this is where the PAR meter becomes really useful. Instead of saying acropora goes at the top, you can start thinking, this particular acropora is doing well around this PAR level. Then you can find the environment elsewhere in the tank. The same thing applies for LPS and softies, but I think when you get into the SPS world, lighting and flow matter more. Rather than relying entirely on someone to tell you where to put your corals, you can actually measure your own tank, because every aquarium is different. For this tank, that's especially important because I'm trying to build it into a SPS-dominant reef. Some of the acropora I want to keep are going to have a very difficult time if I put them in the wrong light. So as I bring down those fracs on the 20 gallon and I start putting them in the aquarium, I want to make sure they're at the right light level And I'm gonna have to check that often once they start growing into colonies, because the PAR is gonna change due to shading and crowding. So that means this isn't necessarily a one and done measurement. All right, let's quickly go over the PAR meter I'm using. This is a Danoplus PAR meter. Comes with your display. You've got your mode, your ups and down, you can log. This is for holding, so if I want to hold the measurement so I can write it down. In your mode, you can go to calibration, which you cover this sensor. Hold to calibrate. Pass. All right, that's simple, easy. Very easy to use. Got this nice long cord. I spun it around the extension rod to make it easier to operate. Then you got your sensor at the end, sensor on the cord, goes to your meter. If your tank's not as deep as mine, they just screw off and you can shorten it. I would instruct you to make sure you clean this off after use. You don't want any salt buildup. It does say that it is good to go for saltwater aquariums, but you know, with anything, always clean it when you take it out of the tank. Yeah, this is pretty simple to use. You just want to make sure that your sensor is towards your light. Cool thing about it is having that log so you can log in all your numbers. I just went with sticky notes, it was easier for me to do. And I'm going to keep this thing and use it every time I want to do any PAR readings. Definitely thinking about going in, and once I get the frags from the 20 gallon to go into the aquarium, I'm going to go straight to these shelves. Make sure they're the correct PARs for the frags. Being able to move around the tank quickly and check different locations makes it much easier to actually use PAR as a part of normal reef keeping routine. And that's the real value of something like this to me. It's not just knowing one number, it's being able to understand what's happening throughout the entire aquarium. Using this PAR meter is going to be detrimental to adding SPS in this aquarium, so I can understand the lighting and make sure they're in the right place. And honestly, I think this is one of those reef keeping tools that can save you money. Because instead of buying a coral, putting it somewhere that looks right, and then wondering why it isn't doing well, you can actually measure the environment you're putting it into. Does this mean you absolutely need a PAR meter to keep coral? No. People have successfully been keeping reef tanks for decades without one. But if you're going to get serious into SPS, upgrading your lights, troubleshooting coral issues, or simply trying to improve your reef, I think knowing your PAR is incredibly useful. Because at the end of the day, your corals don't care how bright the tank looks to you. They care about the light they're actually receiving. And now I know exactly what my 180 gallon reef is giving them. If you enjoyed this content and want to learn more about reefing, check out my playlist. As always, smash that like button, subscribe for more reefing goodness, and happy reefing.